Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's program of the Pacific Northwest Railroad Archive as we have our regular bi-weekly meeting. My name is Jonathan Fisher. I'm your host and moderator. We've got a special guest today, Mike Bergman, who will be talking about streetcars in West Seattle. So just a couple of news notes on the calendar coming up events for us. February 28th, we have the rare pleasure of having Bob Kelly, Great Northern expert and past president of the PNRA board, with us talking about Stevens Pass. That's a home game for Bob, so make sure to tune in for that one. Just a rare opportunity to learn more about, Stevens Pass and all that fun stuff. March 9th is the Swim Spectacular, or what I call a Swiminar, Cascade Rail Foundation event that is in Sequim, hosted by the Dungeness River Nature Center. That program will feature one of the guests here today, Alan Miller, talking about the 1970s in Port Angeles. And that program will be available on a live stream, so you don't have to swim to be able to be in the sea. You can watch it live from the comfort of your very own couch, and registrations on the PNRA homepage on the internet. March 13th, Friends of the Washington Park Zoo, thanks to Trent, they're going to be talking about their trains and why can't trains and elephants get along. So March 24th, really special treat for us. Gordon Glattenberg, a world famous photographer, on a Sunday night, we will be talking about Canada and looking at original steam photographs in color in the 1950s taken by Gordon. March 27th, Oregon Rail Heritage Center will be our guest. They're a new guest to our program, so it'll be interesting to learn what they've got. April 10th, Trent Stetz with a program yet to be determined, but we're going to close in on that. And then April 24th, we are having a Jack Christensen double header, which will be a live event at Highline Heritage Museum with Jack and Gary, and we're going to be talking. We'll have a little program, and then we'll take a break, maybe have a piece of pizza or something, if I can talk Bill Zidell into it. And then we'll have a second program at our regularly scheduled 1 p.m. time. That program will be live in person and also will be available as a stream program as well, that is courtesy of the NPRHA. So, like I say, we got a little bit on the calendar coming up, but it's all fun stuff. So I'd like to ask Eric to unmute, and Eric is a member of FOBNR, Friends of the Burlington Northern Railroad. They're the newest member of the PNRA family. They brought some stuff into the building. Welcome, Eric. What's going on with you guys? And first, welcome from all of us to joining PNRA.
Well, thank you. Glad to see us finally get to this point of bringing our collections into Burien. It arrived via one of those pods several weeks ago on a Saturday morning, and the pods delivery vehicle, I don't know if you guys ever seen how those things work, but it broke down out in the alley back there. And halfway through the delivery, and somebody had to rush out from pods with a fuse to get their Honda engine running again. Fortunately, the guy knew exactly what was needed and got it backed up to the door there. And Rich Wilkins recorded a bunch of that on with his camera. We had planned to ship 67 boxes, but mysteriously only 65 seemed to show up there. And so we found one of them back in Minnesota, still in the original locker, that didn't make it. And the other one we're still trying to figure out. But we got them all numbered sequentially and put into the shelves. I think Rich put them next to, I think it's a bunch of stuff that Kurt has put together. Maybe Kurt and Rich together put that together. And Kurt, have you seen those yet?
Yes, Eric, I have. Thank you. We got them nicely uh, tugged, tucked away, all snug and ready for the next step when you give us the word.
Right. So that's what's next for us, is to sort out what's next. We haven't had a planning meeting yet to go over that, but I know that one of our members is working on the digital end of things to marry together what we already had digitally set up to put into the access to memory system, the Atom program. And I don't think that's happened yet, but that's probably going to be one of our first steps. And we've already got some donations that have come in. One of them came into PNRA, and they've turned around and sent it to us to process. So we got to get our organization figured out about how we're going to do all this, and hopefully we don't let anybody down.
So tell us a little bit about your convention coming up this year, and what are Fobner conventions like?
Well, the one coming up in June is in Minot, North Dakota.
Why not Minot? That's what I said.
Now, why not? And usually they're a rail fanning affair more than anything. They we don't spend a lot of time indoors. We'll go out and go to somebody's model railroad, one or two of those, and operate one night, and the rest of it's pretty much going trackside and maybe touring facilities, sometimes industrial facilities, or Burlington, Northern Santa Fe current facilities. And we'll go pretty much a Wednesday through Saturday night, and it's a nice small group. There's usually anywhere from 15 to 25 people come, and they come from all over the country, Georgia, New York, Washington State. So and we'll meet somewhere that's on one of the predecessor railroads, or Santa Fe roads too. So we get around somewhere different every year, and once in a while we'll have a repeat. But it's a great little gathering if you want to do some rail fanning.
Well, and it's kind of interesting because folks like Fobner are like the UPHS, because the UPHS is still a railroad that exists. And Fobner is BNSF as well, which is a railroad that still exists. So for some of the Neanderthals around the office like me, I mean, I'm a Milwaukee guy, I mean, that's just hard for me to understand. So good stuff.
I think officially it's BN and Montana Rail Link. And
oh, okay.
I think the doing it on a BNSF property is pretty much because they can get us into facilities that that are still in use. Last year we did Vancouver, Washington, and an example of one of the tours we did was Port of Vancouver. We rented a bus and got into places that the public can't get into. And we also toured the Kalama Export Grain Elevator, one of the grain elevators up in Kalama, which was quite good. Although I think they're mostly served by Union Pacific, it was still a great tour.
Great.
So yeah, one of the things on my list to do is to find out who in the Seattle metro area is currently doing archiving work. in Burien or remote at home, and see if we can get some people focused on doing what we need to do once we know what we need to do.
Always good to have a plan and then implement, and then change it. So, but,
Yes.
we're glad you're here, and that just kind of speaks to the growth potential of PNRA being able to add a significant new member like this, after 15 years of success. So it's great stuff, and thanks, Eric, for kind of an ad hoc deal. Now, I'm going to turn it over to our special guest, Mike Bergman, and this is going to be kind of a 1-2 punch because Mike will be the narrator, but I am in the film projection room doing the slide advancing. So I can't just sit back and watch like I like to do. So let me just do one thing, and I think I'm gonna just leave this like it is. And I'm going to say welcome to one of our favorite people, Mike Bergman, president of the Tacoma chapter of the NRHS, all around swell guy and an expert on streetcars. Mike, take it away.
Well, thanks. There's a lot of familiar faces I'm seeing here today. It's really great here, and a welcome to this presentation. One of the reasons I've been always kind of interested in streetcar history is that it was really the first technology that allowed cities to develop beyond walking distance of major destinations. And so when electric streetcars were invented in Richmond, Virginia in 1888 by Frank Sprague, he really perfected the electric streetcar. Things really took off in terms of urban transit development, and that applied to Seattle and West Seattle, as well as many other cities across the country. So electric streetcars, by definition, are usually single rail cars operating in the street and getting their power from an overhead trolley wire. They were really the predominant form of public transportation in Seattle until the late 1930s, early 1940s, when they were replaced by motor buses and electric trolley buses. So I want to start off here with a little look at the streetcar system in Seattle as it existed in 1935. So Jonathan, if you could go to the next slide. This shot here gives you an idea of how extensive the electric streetcar system was, even as late as 1935. So the solid lines there are all streetcar lines. The light colored lines are the beginnings of the bus system as it existed in 1935. And so you can see there's really not a lot of duplication between the buses and the streetcars. The buses are serving more newer and less developed areas than the electric streetcars were. In West Seattle, if we focus in on West Seattle, that's really down towards the lower left-hand part of the map here. West Seattle had really some unique geography. It's a peninsula separated from the rest of the city on 3 sides by water. The major obstacle there being the Duwamish River. Now, by 1935, the Duwamish River had been straightened out, and Harbor Island had been constructed. That's the island that you see there just at the south side of Elliott Bay. That was all man-made out of the tide flats of Elliott Bay. And so before Harbor Island was constructed, which took place gradually over about a 10-year period from around 1912 to 1921, that area was tide flats. And when the tide went out, it emptied almost completely of water. And so there were bridges built on pilings that went across where the top end of Harbor Island is today, to get across to West Seattle. But that came much later than 1916. I'm going to cheat a little bit here and talk a little bit about what existed there before those changes that brought both motor vehicles and streetcars to West Seattle. In the early 1890s, West Seattle was practically depopulated compared with the rest of the city. Just a very, very small number of residents there. And in 1891, a local entrepreneur built a cable car line that connected the Admiral District in the vicinity of Admiral in California down to the Harbor Avenue, where a ferry took off for downtown Seattle. That was the first rail transit in West Seattle. And that cable car line had a relatively brief existence. It was out of business by 1898. At that point in time, the area had been incorporated as the city of West Seattle, separate from Seattle itself. And the city of West Seattle actually took over the remains of the cable car line and converted it into an electric streetcar line that did practically the same function. It took you from the ferry up to the Admiral District using a slightly different route that came just south on California Avenue. So that little section of streetcar line that you just see here in the map north of Admiral Way dated back to when an electric streetcar line replaced that original 1891 cable car line. So the first time that we had a streetcar bridge that connected West Seattle directly with downtown Seattle took place in 1907. And in that year, a streetcar line was built south on First Avenue South, and then across Spokane Street and out to the Junction and the Fauntleroy neighborhood. That later on became Line 2, as we see here on the map. So that was really the first direct streetcar line into downtown Seattle. And then the company at that time, which was called Seattle Electric Company, bought the West Seattle Municipal Railway, that short little line that took you to the ferry, and converted it into a line that went directly from downtown to and from downtown. So it started in the Admiral District around Admiral and California, went south on California, went through the Junction and joined in with the number 2 line, the original Fauntleroy line, and they shared track from the Junction into downtown. So that was routes 2 and 3. Route 1 was built shortly after Route 2. That served the Alki neighborhood, birthplace of Seattle. That was the first place where Arthur Denny and other pioneers settled in 1851. Even by that time, the Alki neighborhood was kind of the resort recreation area of Seattle, and the beaches were really popular there. So the Alki line ran along the water, turned there on Harbor Avenue, and then joined in with routes 2 and 3 near the intersection of Harbor Avenue and Spokane Street. And then finally, Route 4, you'll see Route 4 there paralleling the Duwamish River. When this map is depicting the streetcar system as of 1935, and Route 4 by that time had been cut back from Lake Burien, extended considerably farther south through the Highland Park and White Center areas all the way to Lake Burien. A slide that occurred in 1933 had basically cut off the south end of that line from any points that it served south of there. And that Route A, what's shown as Route A as the bus line, replaced the transit service in the Highland Park neighborhood. So at this point in 1935, Route 4 was just a little one-car shuttle that went from the end of the line by the old Boeing airplane factory to Spokane Street, where it connected with the through cars to downtown Seattle. So that kind of gives you a little snapshot of what the streetcar network looked like in West Seattle. Now, the real interesting part is how those streetcars got from West Seattle to downtown over the years, because in that time span for this presentation, 1916 to 1940, an amazing number of changes took place. And at one point, that part of the corridor, basically between Spokane Street and Avalon Way and First and Washington and Pioneer Square, had almost complete separation from other traffic, either elevated or on private right-of-way, and basically what we would consider a light rail line today, with the speed and reliability advantages that entails. So our next slide here, go ahead and switch over, starts in 1916, and this is looking east on Spokane Street, when that whole area between West Seattle and Pigeon Hill, that's the bluff that you see in the distance there, Pigeon Point, was still tide flats. And so you can see that Spokane Street is up on pilings here. And just to the north, or the left-hand side of Spokane Street, you can see the streetcar tracks that headed over to Alki. And then you see another piece of trestle work in the distance there that turns off of Spokane and heads south. And that was the route of the Fauntleroy, the original route of the Fauntleroy trolley line that headed up to the junction and then south towards the Fauntleroy Lincoln Park district. So obviously a lot of things have really, really changed here just in the few years after this picture was taken. The tide flats were filled in. That whole area just to the right of the Spokane Street trestle became the steel works that are still there today, steel recycling, which for many years was run by Bethlehem Steel from Pennsylvania. So let's switch to the next slide here. So this is actually taken the same direction, but farther east. And again, you can see Pigeon Point in the background, and you can see a streetcar in the distance approaching. And this point here where you see the little waiting shelter, that was the junction there where the Fauntleroy line branched off from the Alki line at this point in time. And so this picture was taken about the same time that the previous one was here as well. This part of West Seattle was always really interesting. It was variously called Riverside and Youngstown. I assume Youngstown came from the steel producing city in Ohio. And the whole geography of the area has changed so dramatically over the years. It's really hard to believe what this would look like today. So next slide. Here we're back at the intersection of Spokane Street and Avalon Way. And then the northern leg of the intersection here is Harbor Avenue. And if you look really closely, you can see an Alki streetcar coming south on Harbor Avenue. So everything kind of joined together here on to Spokane Street to head into downtown. This picture was taken in the early 20s when Admiral Way was under construction. So this was another way to get into the top of the West Seattle Hill. And this is where Admiral ramped up to the side of the hill and then headed up towards the Admiral Junction. And so in this picture, we're looking straight north on Avalon Way with Spokane Street and Harbor Avenue in the distance. Next slide. Here we've turned to the right a little bit, and here are here's the rush hour about 1926, and we're looking in the northeasterly direction. And so you see streetcars here, the ones that are nearest to us are either on Route 2 or 3, and I think that's a Route 1 streetcar going to Alki in the farther distance. Again, they were still working on the tide flats. You can see open water there in the background. And then you can also see parts of the industrial area that bordered Harbor Island. By this time, late 20s, mid 20s, traffic congestion was really starting to hit Seattle in a big way. Car ownership just exploded during the 1920s. Many families got cars that couldn't afford them before. The low cost of cars like the Model T, they just became really, really popular just in a very brief period of time. And of course, that affected the ridership on the streetcars. So next slide.
Yeah.
This picture is interesting because it shows the next part of this corridor that we're looking at heading towards downtown. And this is Spokane Street. And in 1930, the city built a streetcar only viaduct. What a novel thing that was, that connected the three streetcar lines in West Seattle to the twin bascule bridges that had been constructed during the 20s, and the second bridge was finished in 1930 at the same time that this viaduct opened. So as a streetcar piece of infrastructure here, this had a really brief life. It opened in 1930 and was last used by streetcars in 1940, just 10 years later. And that old truck that you see on the right there is part of the construction crew that's building the on-ramp to the then new West Seattle bascule bridge that was nearing completion when this picture was taken. Next slide. Another shot here of that concrete viaduct here that carried the streetcars. There was actually a station near where the city's fire station was there, near 26th and Spokane. And you can see the stairway leading over on the left-hand side of the picture here up to the platform where you could board the streetcar to downtown or to any of the three tails of the West Seattle lines there. With three lines, the service here was really frequent, just about any time of the day. Maybe had at most a 5 or 6 minute wait. And so this became a really important place for local buses. That's the Delridge Way bus that's waiting there at the curb for people that are getting on and off the streetcar up above, making that connection. And so that was very, very typical of the way the system was laid out in the 20s and 30s, that the streetcars provided the line haul service direct to downtown, and in many cases, buses didn't go downtown at all. They just fed the streetcar lines. So next slide. And here's kind of a dramatic view of that same streetcar viaduct shortly before the opening. And there again, you can kind of see where the land here just to the north of Spokane Street is gradually getting filled in, and some of the industrial development that's taking place there. Interestingly enough now, part of the Pigeon Point was dug away when the current high-level West Seattle Bridge was built. And so it'd be hard to replicate this photo, the position of this photo today. And also interestingly, the Sound Transit light rail line, which is planned to serve West Seattle, will also dig into Pigeon Point a little bit further in order to squeeze in between the hillside and the current West Seattle Bridge. So next slide here.
Hang on. Come on.
A question, is in any industrial buildings in this picture here, the Youngstown picture, any industrial buildings still there that we could recognize?
No.
Like plant or anything? This is away from that a lot, huh?
This is part of Terminal 5, the Port of Seattle's intermodal area.
Right.
And so this is that area where you see all the industrial buildings is now filled with tracks and storage for containers.
Okay, thanks.
Mike, I have a question. Was any of this cement elevated streetcar thing used as roads after 1940?
That's a really good question, Gary. And I've actually been trying to find that out because I learned quite recently that even though streetcars stopped using this structure in 1940, it wasn't torn down until 1948.
Oh,
And so I've been trying to find out, well, did it just sit there unused all those years, or was it open to some kind of motor vehicle traffic?
Hmm.
I mean, I would certainly think that it's structurally it was capable of handling motor vehicle traffic if it handled streetcars. But on the other hand, it was probably pretty narrow as well. That's something I'm going to do a little research on.
Well,
And they
Mike,
may,
there's a series of aerial photographs taken in this area in the early 40s, and they're publicly available at UW. Maybe you could tell from those things.
That might be a good place there. Where are those available there?
The map library, they call it the series of 1944 Army aerials, but they were actually taken in 41, 42, and they're big, huge lithographs, and maybe you could tell, maybe you can't, but it's something to check into. So it's the map library, UW. Get a hold of Matt Parsons. He's the guy in charge of it, and he can tell you the whole thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Great tip. Keep going, Mike.
Okay, so this view is looking west towards West Seattle. And again, you can see the passenger platform there on the left-hand side. And this is just a few months, I should say, before abandonment of the streetcars and their replacement by trolley buses. And that old Chevy or whatever car it is there that's coming up towards us is entering the bridge, the old Baskel Bridge. There are actually two of them, Bridge 1 and 2, which I'll talk about in a little more detail later on here in the presentation. Okay, next slide.
We're going the wrong way. Here we go.
There we go. Okay, so I was talking about Bridge 1 and Bridge number 2. And Bridge number 1 was completed in 1923, and it replaced a swing span bridge. So on the top, there's two maps here. On the top map, you can see where the old swing span used to be in its center pivot. And that bridge was just a lane in each direction, and it was used by both streetcars and motor vehicles, and it was completed in 1917. Then Bridge number 1, which was what they call a bascule bridge, where there are two separate leaves that open and are counterweighted. That was completed in 1923, and at the time it was completed, it was used by motor vehicles only, and the streetcars continued to use the swing span bridge. Then in the later 20s, and after about 3 years, they discovered that the pilings and basic infrastructure of the swing span were so deteriorated that the city engineer condemned the bridge, even though it was only being used by streetcars. And so the Municipal Railway had to come up very quickly with a way to get the streetcars onto the new bridge, the Bridge number 1. And so the result was some very interesting temporary track and trestle work that got the streetcars up onto the Bridge number 1 and could continue service to the West Seattle area. So here on the map, you'll see the Northern Pacific Bridge down at the bottom. That kind of is the one constant that's been there in the same place through all these changes in other kinds of transportation crossing the Duwamish West Waterway. Now then, the bottom map here shows what happened after Bridge number 2 was completed in 1930. And here we went from the former situation where both directions of traffic, streetcars and motor vehicles, used Bridge number 1 to where Bridge number 1 became westbound only, And the new bridge number 2 became eastbound only, with streetcars sharing space with motor vehicles only on the bascule span itself and not on the approaches. So you'll see that in the bottom map here, the streetcars are in the middle between each direction of traffic, and they're running on their own private right-of-way through that section until they get onto the bridge itself. So next slide here. So here's the 1917 bridge. And this is looking southwest towards Pigeon Point. And you can see here, it's a lane in each direction. There's streetcar tracks mixing, so with streetcars mixing with the motor vehicle traffic. The reason why there's a junction here in the track that you see is that the track that peels off towards the left goes on to what was then a new section of elevated trestle that that was streetcar only, and took the streetcars along Spokane Street from this bridge over to First Avenue South. Totally separated from other traffic. And the track that comes straight towards the photographer was the original track that operated on the surface level of Spokane Street. Next slide. So here, the cameraman is turned around and is looking in the opposite direction from the last picture. And you can see the then new Spokane Street trestle with its private right-of-way. And then there's these ramps, all planked, wooden planked for motor vehicles coming up from the surface level of Spokane Street to get onto that 1917 swing span bridge. So these pictures here were taken about 1919, just shortly after the city took over the streetcar system. Next slide. So here we have bridge number 1 under construction with the old swing span just to the south of it. Obviously, they kept the swing span open to traffic until the new bridge was opened. And so this picture was taken in about 1922. The bridge itself finally was completed in 23. Next slide. Here, the bridge number 1 is complete. You can see it right next to the old swing span. It's going on at an angle to the south of it. Note here also that the approaches to the swing span, the streetcars are running on trestle work that's totally separate from the motor vehicle ramp up to the bridge. And once bridge number 1 was open, all the motor vehicle traffic was switched over to it. And for about 2 or 3 years, the streetcars continued to use the swing span. And of course, since they were the only ones using it, there weren't any traffic conflicts with motor vehicles. Next slide.
Mike, I just quick question on bridge number 1. Is bridge number 1 the one that had the bad encounter with the ship?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I'll get into that a little later, but yes, that was the bridge. So in this picture, what we're seeing here is the bridge number 1 over on the right. It's the approach to it. And this is the temporary shoe fly that was put in place on both sides of bridge number 1 so that the streetcars could use it when the swing span was condemned. And so it's crawling underneath the approach to the bridge, and it'll join in with the traffic on the bridge in one of the pictures that I'm going to show a little later here. Again, some landmarks here. That's the main part of West Seattle in the distance, and that's Pigeon Point over towards the left there. That's, again, a kind of a constant geological feature there. And that little bluff that you see, and it has been carved out so many times now, it'd be interesting to do like a geological comparison. This picture also shows construction of bridge number 2. So on the left-hand side, you can see the approaches under construction here of that bridge. So this picture was taken probably about 1929 here, or well, there it is, May 12th, 1930. How convenient, on the left-hand side. Next slide here.
Mike, just before we go, if you notice by that telephone pole, There's an advertisement for the North Coast Limited on that billboard.
Oh, you got a pair of sharp eyes there. I just see that. Yes, that's really something. Ah. Okay, so here that same streetcar, presumably that we just saw in the previous picture, is joining in with the traffic on bridge number 1. And this was not a really very acceptable situation because the streetcars pretty much had to force their way into the traffic flow. And it wasn't so bad joining in as it was going in the other direction and waiting for the oncoming traffic to let up enough so that they could make the left turn. Next slide. Here's a streetcar making that left turn, going in the opposite direction, heading towards West Seattle. So this series of shots was taken by the Seattle Engineering Department photographer, and they're just really priceless, how he captured all this.
That particular streetcar looks weird, Mike, from this perspective. Is it anything special?
Yes. These cars were built in 1907 by St. Louis Car Company for Seattle Electric. And as they were originally delivered, the one end was open to the elements. It was, you had the side panels, but there were no windows. And that really wasn't very practical in Seattle with the weather conditions that we have here year round. And so they were enclosed several years later, but that elevated side panel still exists there. So that's what makes them look kind of unusual. Okay, next slide. Another shot here of the shoe fly ramp. In this picture, also you can see the concrete piers going up for bridge number 2, which directly paralleled bridge number 1. When both bridges were opened, there were a total of 8 traffic lanes then available for traffic going to and from West Seattle, which were to pretty much be the standard there from 1930 when the second bridge was opened until 1978 when bridge number 1 was taken out of service by an errant freighter and the traffic flow was reduced to just 4 lanes, 2 lanes in each direction for several years while a replacement bridge was constructed. Next slide. Here you have a picture here of the shoe fly on the eastern end of bridge number 1, again with a streetcar having to kind of force its way into the traffic flow in the middle of the bridge. So we're looking east here towards Beacon Hill, and a pretty full streetcar it looks like there in this picture taken in 1930. Next slide. So with bridge number 2 nearing completion, the Municipal Railway was so anxious to get out of that crazy traffic flow that they laid temporary track, which you can see here on the right, with just ties just laid right on top of the pavement, and trolley wire installed. With in this picture, you see the permanent track has been installed, and the trolley overhead crew is putting overhead trolley wire up above it, so that that'll be the permanent track when the bridge opens to full traffic levels. So again, we're looking east on Spokane Street Bridge and Duwamish River off to the right here. Next slide. So in this picture, we see both bridges completed. I was never quite figured out with 2 parallel bascule bridges. I assumed that there was just one bridge tender that operated both, just to save on labor costs. But this was the way you got to and from West Seattle for a good almost 50 years.
The nearest bridge that's still there is the NP Bridge, correct?
That is correct. Yep, that is the one constant in all these old maps and pictures. The NP Bridge has not changed its position at all.
Would it be fair to say that one reason the bascule bridges were built would be to not only increase the traffic capacity for streetcars and vehicles, but that it permitted larger ships to go south on the waterway from the Spokane Street, that then they could squeeze by the center pier of a swing bridge, maybe?
Oh, very definitely, Ed. When you look at the pictures of that swing span, it didn't provide much vessel clearance at all. And the bascule bridges were a big improvement in that respect.
Thank
Will
you.
they provide unlimited clearance?
Well, yeah, certainly vertical clearances was.
Vertical clearance, yeah.
Mhm. Yep.
Similar to Bridge 4 in Ballard, where one of our guests here made a presentation on that a few years ago. So, okay, ready?
Next slide. Yeah.
There you
Okay,
go.
we're gonna head farther east now. So we're kind of moving past the West Waterway bridges and over to the wooden trestles that carried the streetcars across Harbor Island. And so this picture was taken in 1940. You're looking north, and you can see the downtown skyline there in the background, and you can see ships that are lined up on the east waterway of Harbor Island. And so the trestle work here enabled the streetcars to be completely unobstructed by motor vehicle traffic, railroads. You see there's the boxcar down in the bottom part of the picture here. There were various spurs and things that ran underneath the streetcar trestle. And so it was a great way of providing fast, reliable service to West Seattle residents. And by the way, I might add here's another one of those St. Louis built cars from 1907 that has the enclosed in back end that makes it look kind of weird. But there were quite a few of these cars in Seattle, over 100 at one point, and they lasted right until the end of service in 1940-41. Next slide. There was a station on Harbor Island, an elevated station. Not exactly something that would win any architectural awards, but it did provide access for many thousands of workers, mostly shipyard workers, who were occupied there on Harbor Island. And this picture was taken, I believe, in 1929.
It's still quite a hike by foot from the shipyards at the north end of Harbor Island down to this point.
It would have been a little bit of a hike. Yep, definitely. And then followed by the trek up the stairs here. There were no escalators or elevators in those days.
Were there any streetcar lines north and south on Harbor Island?
No.
Okay.
No. Interestingly enough, there was a trolley bus line that covered the interior of Harbor Island that was built during World War II.
Okay.
Next slide. Another shot here of the Spokane Street trestle. This is an inbound car heading eastbound on the trestle here. Again, you can really see what a big advantage this elevated section had over traffic that was down on the lower section of Spokane Street. And you can almost look into the eyes here of the motorman staring at the cameraman in this picture. Next slide. So one of the things that was particularly interesting about this West Seattle to downtown streetcar corridor was what was called the Railroad Avenue Trestle. And during World War I, there were several shipyards along the Seattle waterfront south of Pioneer Square, including the Skinner and Eddy shipyards, that were building both merchant ships and military ships for the war effort. And that became a huge industry in Seattle during World War I. And in that era, of course, everybody got there by streetcar. Well, the streetcars ran at that time on First Avenue South, which you can see here as the kind of the lighter shade line heading south directly from Pioneer Square. And you had to cross what was not just a single track, but kind of a labyrinth of railroad tracks to get to the shipyards by the shoreline. And so the result was that there was a lot of accidents, a lot of people getting hit by trains, and there was a lot of pressure here to do something about this serious issue. So the mayor of Seattle proposed building a elevated section for streetcars that would start at First Avenue and South Washington Street in Pioneer Square, and then would head south parallel to the railroad, but grades separated from it. And it had stations along the way. The King Street station there, no relation to the railroad station, was there basically to provide access to those shipyards. Holgate provided access as well, the next station down on the line. And just south of Holgate, the elevated section dropped down to grade. You'll see here on the map, it says at grade private right-of-way. So that this part of the alignment basically duplicates or has been replaced by Highway 99 today. So when you drive down Highway 99, you have the old Pacific Coast Milwaukee Road yard on the left, heading northbound, and you have the Northern Pacific yard on the right-hand side. But historically, in between, there was this streetcar rapid transit line, so to speak. It came down to Spokane Street and then joined in with the what was then the existing Spokane Street trestle that then went over to, again, originally the swing span bridge, and then later on Bridges 1 and Bridges 2 across the West Waterway. So really a fascinating little piece of historical Seattle that has been gone for a long time. And I'll talk a little bit more about that here in these other slides. So next slide, please. So this picture is looking north on the at-grade section of what people call the Railroad Avenue Trestle, with the Northern Pacific on the right, the Pacific Coast Milwaukee Road on the left, and then various piers along the waterway there that is just opposite of Harbor Island. And so again, the streetcars were unobstructed, had their own private right-of-way, could provide fast, reliable service. And a very, very basic station arrangement here with wooden shed type, bush type shelters. And you can see the photographer standing at the top of the pedestrian overpass here, looking down on the track. And you just walk down these stairs here to access the streetcars. Next slide. This is the next station north at Holgate Street. Now, at this point here, the at-grade section had ramped back up to an elevated section. And Holgate actually was a street crossing. So there was actually a motor vehicle bridge that crossed the tracks at Holgate Street, long gone. And then at the top of this elevated section here was a passenger station. If you look really closely in the background, you can see the smokestacks of an Alaska Steamship Company ship. That was their pier down there. Next slide. So entering downtown, the elevated streetcar trestle made a sharp turn towards the east and crossed over the tracks that ran along the waterfront, the Seattle waterfront, and dropped down pretty abruptly to the street level of Washington Street in Pioneer Square. Must have been a really scenic ride, I can only imagine here. Next slide. So here's what it looked like where it ramps down onto Washington Street. You can see here the track layout is such that you can, if you're coming from the north from the right here, you can either turn right, get on the elevated structure, or you can continue south along First Avenue and use the old routing to get to West Seattle. Interestingly, all of the buildings in this photo are still there as part of the historic district. And the Marine Corps recruiting station, I don't think that's there anymore, but also, I think the Milwaukee Road had an employment office in that building over on the left. And I've seen it in other pictures, but it doesn't seem like you can see the sign for it here in this one. So this series of pictures was taken just before the closure of the elevated Railroad Avenue trestle. And again, the trestle had been built quickly. It was built in a period of about 9 months in 1919, and all of wood. The city engineer determined that extensive repairs and renovations were needed to keep this trestle open and functioning. And the Municipal Railway, which was prohibited by law from using tax money, just was not getting enough in 5-cent fares to pay for a project like that. So what they ended up doing was going back to the original routing that used First Avenue South to reach West Seattle instead of the elevated trestle. And I'll get into that a little bit later here. Next slide. So this is dated October 21st, 1929, and we're looking east here on the Spokane Street trestle. And you see the steel span there that crosses East Marginal Way. Pardon me. And that's the remnant of the Railroad Avenue trestle that you're seeing on the left, now cut off from its junction with the Spokane Street trestle. And the section of the Spokane trestle that you see kind of trailing off towards the right is actually new. That was built after the Railroad Avenue line was truncated. And that basically ramps down to First Avenue and Spokane Street. So the Seattle Engineering Department photographer was trying to illustrate very well, I think, how all this sequence of changes took place. I like the old traffic signal there at First and Marginal with just a red and a green phase. And the railroad crossing signal looks kind of unique there as well. Next slide. Okay, so this is the end. That's the tail of that section of the Spokane Street trestle here that now ramps down to First Avenue South. And you see its junction, its track junction with First Avenue South. So we're looking west here, and a West Seattle streetcar, if it was coming towards us, would make a left turn off to the right-hand side of the picture here and then continue on into downtown Seattle. And if you look closely on the right-hand side, you can see the remnant of the Railroad Avenue trestle kind of faintly in the distance, hadn't been torn down yet. And of course, that was the section that had been condemned. So all this happened in late 1929, and that was pretty much the end of the Railroad Avenue trestle. The Spokane Street trestle and that concrete viaduct on the other side of the Duwamish Waterway that we were talking about earlier, those all stayed in service until the middle of 1940, when the West Seattle streetcar lines were converted to bus and trolley coach. So next slide there. That's the end of my presentation here. I'd be happy to talk about it more or answer any questions.
Wow.
Like, in the Northern Pacific Joint Facility photographs taken in the late 1920s, there's a bunch of pictures of that bridge.
I have seen a few of those, yes.
Okay, there's three or four views of it. I didn't know if you knew about them or not, but yeah, they're nice pictures, and the whole stretch along there was parallel to the NP, so they show up in multiple views. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they crossed the Northern Pacific in several places there, and And so I can see where that would end up in the joint facilities album.
Yeah, Ed Bernstein, go ahead, please, Ed.
Mike, a softball and a hardball question for you. The softball question is, did your interest, since you're a lifelong Seattleite, as I understand it, did your interest in the streetcars and the whole system predate your employment in the transit industry, or what's the sequence of that interest? Were you a historian before a transit planner, or vice versa?
I would say I was probably a historian before a transit planner.
Okay.
There's been 2 books written about Seattle streetcars. One by Leslie Blanchard, who worked for the Seattle Engineering Department, and he published his book in 1968. And I was working at the Seattle Public Library in 1969. And he would come in frequently because he was still doing research on various Seattle streetcar topics. And I met Leslie Blanchard at that time. And I think that's what really got me interested in the topic. And of course, then many, many years later, I wrote a book about Seattle streetcars, which I think had a much more intensive pictorial section, kind of trying to give people an idea of what it was like during the streetcar era, more than Leslie's narrative history.
All right, thank you. And the second question, in the June 2011 NRHS National Convention based in Tacoma with several outlying activities, we had a Seattle streetcar trolley type tour inspecting various facilities that then existed in Seattle. Do you think there's a possible market for putting something like that together in this coming summer? And would you be interested in putting that together?
Right now, we're putting together a similar kind of tour for Rail Camp, the NRHS Rail Camp.
Okay.
And I'm hoping that through that process, we'll get some contacts established that'll enable us to do that for other groups as well.
Okay, thanks.
Like the Tacoma chapter of the NRHS.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, another adults, because the thing is that the rail campers can do all sorts of things on rail equipment with official permission that you can't do as an adult. So
that's right. I hear from adults all the time that, hey, I want to go to this thing.
Yeah. Any more questions or comments from our esteemed gallery today? I'm just kind of looking around the room here. I'm gonna just check in with a couple of people. Trent, what's the weather like down there in the Rose City?
It was nice yesterday. Today it's 41 and rainy.
Getting any wind?
No wind.
Oh,
No wind.
okay. And
No
in the
wind.
Tri-Cities, Steve how's it over there?
It's 45, partly cloudy. Winds out of the north at 10 miles an hour.
Yeah. Joel McCurry, Cary, North Carolina. Are you here today, Joel?
We're here. It's what'd you say, 62?
About 62.
62 and mostly sunny.
62 and mostly sunny. And Eric, up there are you on the Sammamish Plateau? Do I finally get my geography right?
Yeah, Sammamish Plateau, Old Issaquah, up above the NP line that went out to Issaquah and out to Tanner, I guess, out in North Bend. Anyway, 48 degrees and high and dry at the moment.
And Ed Bernstein, remind me where you are and what the weather's like out there.
in Gig Harbor, it's clear, calm, 48, 4 inches new snow.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Always gotta, we always gotta get the comedians involved. So that's great. Thanks, guys. Hey, I thought today's program was fun, and Mike, it was very informative. I mean, I live in West Seattle, and I can see Mike Inkelkofer nodding his head up and down. He enjoyed it as well. We all enjoyed this, and it's just really great to have your programming. So thank you so much for being our guest. We're a little bit after the hour. Kurt's giving you a big hand too. We love you. So 2 weeks, we're gonna have Bob Kelly and we'll be talking about the Great Northern. So if I've got nothing more from the community, I'm gonna say, oh, Ed Burnson, okay.
Just a quick question, we can allow Mike a 30-second commercial for his latest book? If it's still available?
Mike?
Yes, Seattle Streetcar Era is still available from Washington State University Press.
Okay, thanks.
And in fact, someone just bought a copy the other day and I signed it for him. So they're still out there.
Great, thanks.
It's a New York Times bestseller, folks, so hop on it while you can.
Yes.
So, back to live action. There's Joel. Hi, Joel.
Hey,
Did you have something? Go ahead.
yeah, so here on the East Coast, we watch Trolleyology from the Pennsylvania Trolley Museum.
Okay.
Every now and then, Seattle comes up, Minneapolis comes up, so it's not just Pennsylvania. In
Well,
case
thanks. It's good
anyone's
to know.
interested, right?
All right. Well, thank you, Joel. And we always remember another way of getting your host's attention is when you do this. When you do that, then I always know that you're wanting to get a hold of me, and that always works too. So however we want to do it. Trent, did you raise your hand?
Yeah,
Look at that. Hey,
I'm trying.
what's going on?
I just to relate to this group, I get asked a lot how I got interested in railroad history.
Okay.
In my case, behind my grandparents' house was a streetcar and trolley museum. Doesn't everybody have a streetcar and trolley museum behind your grandparents' house? It's like the natural thing. You walk back there behind the cornfield, there's tracks and trolleys and streetcars. And so that's how I got interested in all of this railroad history, was that early adventures.
Where was that location, Trent?
That was in Olmsted Falls, Ohio. It was called Trolleyville. A gentleman who was building a mobile home park wanted to have the guests get around in the mobile home park via streetcars and trolleys. So he collected streetcars and trolleys within the mobile home park and set up a route that had a loop, 2 loops, and back and forth, and things like that. And it loop behind my grandparents' house. So we used to sit there and wave to the trolley all the time.
Wow, that's
Thank you.
great stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was interested in how people kind of end up with this this interest in trains. It's always kind of fun. Randy, what you got for us? Randy,
I'm a member of the Baltimore Streetcar Museum, which is along the Jones Falls in central Baltimore. So I try to keep Mike appraised of the renovation efforts that they have underway, which are significant.
Great.
Good place to visit too. I haven't been back there for a few years, but any East Coasters would definitely want to hit that spot.
There you go. And on to Gary. Gary, go ahead.
Mike, thank you so much. Really enjoyed your presentation. There were a number of pictures that aren't in the original collection from Walt Ainsworth. Did those come in from the Seattle Engineering Department, or were you?
I think if I recall, Gary, that those Seattle Engineering Department pictures were in the collection. Whether they were attributed to Walt, I'm not sure. I'm not absolutely sure about that.
I just didn't remember them from going through the collection.
Yeah.
But there was some of those pictures, how that everything came into Spokane Street were very interesting. I hadn't seen those.
I do know that the original negatives are in the city archives.
Oh.
And I have seen some of those pictures in other sources. There are books that have been written on West Seattle history, for example. Some of them appear there. But the history of bridges in West Seattle, you could certainly write a good sized book just about that topic.
Yes.
Hey, Mike, do you know what happened to Leslie Blanchard's collection when he died?
I believe that, well, I'm not absolutely sure. There was some consolidation going on. He had some items. Warren Wing had quite a bit of trolley items. There was a fellow that worked for the city water department, and his name escapes me right at the moment, but he was also really active and had a big collection.
Bill Converse?
Pardon?
Bill Converse?
No. His name will come to me here.
As soon as we go off the air.
Well, I
Yeah.
thought where you got mixed up, this is gonna make, Walt Ainsworth bought out Warren Wing's collection.
Yes.
That's how come the two kind of got merged together. So the streetcar pictures were almost all from his, not from Walt.
Yeah. I think it's possible that Warren got Leslie's collection.
That
That's
wouldn't
just,
be a bit
it's just a
surprised.
guess.
That's what I seem to remember too. I just wonder what you thought of it, because I think Warren told me that it would make sense. They were good buddies and they were in the same sort of thing.
Yes.
Sense, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I know that Turner took some streetcar photos, but
He was a motorman.
was there a separate streetcar collection that he put together, or
Oh, well,
they're just into Warren Wing's stuff?
unfortunately, the Turner collection was rather mishandled.
Oh,
And it got scattered all around the place, and I ended up with a small portion of it, and then the guy downtown Seattle who charged us $10,000 for a single photograph got the bulk of it.
oh, okay.
And so it got scattered around, but Walt ended up with quite a bit of it because Warren was actually met Turner and was at his house before he died and once afterwards, and he got the bulk of what was left of the negatives, but a lot of it was nitrate. And just gone, and whatever the prints, and then somebody went and computer scanned tons and tons of his photographs way back, and Warren got a portion of those, and the rest of it gone, and we have no idea who it is or what happened to the records or anything like that. And then a lot of it apparently got destroyed sometime thereafter. So, but it's really too bad. I went to the house. It's in West, up in Ballard, and nobody there knew anything about it. So the house didn't stay in the family, so they're all gone. But that's what happened. Now it's too bad. So Warren got the bulk of what was obtainable. But the stuff that was gone before that, nobody knows.
Ed, go ahead, please. Ed Burnson.
The names you mentioned are quite familiar. When Tacoma chapter got started in April 1965, that 3 or 4 years before the 1970 BN merger, we had as early members of Tacoma chapter NRHS William Converse, and we still have his several dozen manually prepared notebooks of steam locomotive rosters from all over the country. I don't remember much about electric railroads in that collection, but I haven't looked at it for 50 years. But people like Perry Brunson and was a member of the chapter, and several of the people you just mentioned briefly. Walt Ainsworth, I'm not sure about Walt Ainsworth, but I know Warren Wing was a member for a while. And several of the photographers or electric railroading stuff you just mentioned were members at that time. But of course, we all go on to do other things. And there were several other organizations operating at the same time. One was the Northwest Trolley Group, I think they called themselves, who had a very strict policy of no dues, no newsletters, no nothing, just show up first Friday.
Right.
But anyway, in Tacoma chapter's archives, we have some Bill Converse stuff. I don't remember if we have anything interesting yet. We'll have to take another look from the other photographers.
Well, I found out, Ed, after Bill Converse died, I find out that his wife and my stepmother were good friends. They never bothered to tell me this. And so I showed up at Bill Converse's house after he died, and his wife was selling off his collection. He had a massive dining car china collection, and I think most of that went to Bruce Fowler, but the rest of it was all up for sale. I had $5 whole, and that was it. And I bought these, him and another guy went to UW, and they actually got their hands on the original Clark Kinsey negatives, 4,500 of those original negatives, and printed all of them. So that's how come the UW has a set available for viewing. So they had a stack of those there. So I got 5 of those. His wife, I think, kind of felt sorry for me. She gave me these big bags of photographs. Nobody wanted to bother to sort. So she said, here, take these. I took them home, and it was all almost Skagit River. You never find Skagit River pictures. There were hundreds of them in there. because he worked for City Light and was going to do a book on the railroad and borrowed a bunch of stuff from the city. He died and supposedly it never went back, but the collection was just scattered and sold to all kinds of people.
So Daniel, does Wilkins know about that?
I have no idea.
Oh.
But I was there and that's what the woman told me. So I have no
Oh.
reason to doubt her. But my God, there's thousands and thousands of slides and prints and negative. They're all been sold at $5 whole bucks.
So, I mean, because Wilkins has been working on a book on City Lights Railroad, so.
Oh, I told him I had all this stuff, but it,
Oh, okay.
and then there, in Walt Ainer's collection, there's a half a dozen or so color slides taken up there. Swanson got a ride on it, and somewhere in Magnolia, there is a house, and there are several thousand, if not tens of thousands, of negatives, slides, prints, all this stuff from Swanson's collection. It's sitting in a basement. It's dumped over on the floor, I guess, and it just anyway. And they won't part with it no matter what. It's really disgusting. I mean, they stole all this stuff, tens of thousands of bucks worth of brass, the whole works. And but that stuff sitting there. Wally collected stuff from all kinds of people, and he had lots of money in the right time, right place. But the family won't do anything. They're just going to let it sit there, and who knows what's happened to it.
Well, you know, these
One
things
final
happen.
thought.
Go ahead.
One final thought. I can think about since the 1960s with the Tacoma chapter and RHS, these collections that are being mentioned were all personal collections. Some were extensive, some were less so, but all carefully protected or carefully gathered by the individual. We did not have a good system in place for where to put all this stuff, or where to encourage the family and the collector to put in his will what the heck is supposed to happen to it. And I recall distinctly that the gentleman who was the assistant librarian for the Tacoma Public Library, in charge of the Northwest Reserve collection, which is all their historical stuff, which included at that time some Northern Pacific and some Tacoma streetcar and some Puget Sound electric records and things, among others, told me about 30 years ago. He said, Ed, you've got to get people actively involved in this stuff and recording the collections, because he says we're running out of space here. And if somebody comes in with a city photographer's collection and needs 200 shelf feet of space, something may go. And if there's no active interest in the railroad collection, it might go. Or the streetcar collection, it might go. So fortunately, we now have an organization like Pacific Northwest Rail Archive to be a well-managed recipient of these things, that we can encourage our own heirs and our own friends to put the PNRA in the will as a initial recipient, depending on what you want to do with the stuff later. The point is, we did not have a good system for much of the last 50 years. We do now, and that's really important to me. So thank you guys for doing all of what we're doing.
Great. Thank you, Ed, for the testimonial. Mike Bergman, go ahead, please.
The name that I couldn't remember was Lawton Gowie.
Lawton Gowie.
Yes, he was a member too.
Lawton was an employee at the city water department.
Yep.
His collection went to the UW.
Right.
I'm quite sure of that. We mentioned James Turner, fantastic photographer. He was a Municipal Railway motorman, streetcar motorman. Harold Hill took many streetcar pictures. He, a lot of these folks were just rail fans. If it ran on rails, they were interested in them, and they took pictures of them. And of course, much of that was steam and diesel, but some of them had a definite interest in electric streetcars. So we should be eternally grateful that they were there at the right time and in the right place to record so much of the streetcar era.
And there is an extensive category that was very active in the 60s and 70s, and that was logging railroads. And so
yes.
I'm not sure quite who's focusing on that at this point, but that's a whole area that I think we should take a look at to be sure that it's not being lost.
Well, it's interesting that I can remember as a little kid being in presentations at the Inland Empire NRHS meetings, and just marveling at the passion that these people had over trolleys and streetcars. It's really, it's a niche market for railroad history, but the people that like it are just absolutely passionate about it. And that made an early impression on me at an early age, certainly. So,
Did you
all
hear
right, guys,
what happened to Jonathan, did you ever hear what happened to the Harold Hill movies?
well, now I was thinking about Harold Hill. Now, wasn't he a musician?
I don't know about that, but
You're thinking of Professor Harold Hill.
I'm thinking, yes, exactly.
no, but Harold, apparently some big fight broke out and the family members, and they were taking the reels of movie film, unreeling them and throwing them out the second story window onto the lawn.
Well, it's always sad. Nick has raised his hand. Nick, welcome, and go ahead, please. I don't know what happened to Nick. He was here a second ago. I don't know. Well, Nick, welcome, and go ahead.
Are there any surviving Seattle streetcars anywhere on display?
Daniel?
Dan?
Well, it's not on display. And I actually saw this car 3 times, so I know it exists. The Phantom Lake in Bellevue. Distant relative of mine bought it in 1940 from the streetcar company and used it as a lake cabin for years and had a roof over it and so on. Went there one day and it's gone. And the people who lived there had no clue where it went. And I figured that's it. Who knows? Later, I heard that it got moved not too far from there, but no one seems to know exactly where. But somewhere right around Phantom Lake there near, Bellevue. And supposedly the guy said you drive on the road, you can see it. So if you know where to drive, but it's got, how far would you move something like that? So I presume it's somewhere in that neighborhood. As far as I know, that's the only streetcar that's still around. There's one of the cable cars is in the Smithsonian or something like that.
Yeah, there are 2 Seattle cable cars that are still in existence. One is at the Smithsonian on display, and the other is owned by the Museum of History and Industry, and that is in their warehouse right now.
Yeah, that's the yellow.
There is a Seattle Bernie streetcar, electric streetcar, single truck, that is in a warehouse in Anacortes, and it does not have its original trucks on it there, but the body is still extant.
Anybody that's into Pewtertown Electric employee tags? I got a whole bag of them here.
Nick, thank you very much. That was a great question. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything
Thank you for
want
the
to follow up
for the
on
answer.
there? Anyway, thanks, Nick, for the question.
Yeah, thank you.
We're coming to the bottom of the hour, guys. So Mike has had a great program today, as always, and Mike, we'll have you back in the future. I guarantee it. In the meantime, we've got Bob Kelly in 2 weeks. And today is, of course, St. Valentine's Day. So, tell one of your friends, Happy Valentine's Day. And of course, it's also Ash Wednesday. So, just sort of an interesting combination of dates. If I don't hear anything more, I'm, host and moderator. I'm also the parliamentarian, and so I can call for adjournment. And so I'm going to call for an adjournment, and I'm going to thank everybody for being here. Thanks, Mike, our special guest. Thanks for our audience, and just always, put in a good word with PNRA, for this program. Your support is appreciated. So until we meet again in 2 weeks, I'm going to say to everybody, have a great day, and don't take any wooden nickels. Bye for now.
Unless it's Tenino.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Tenino, they're legal.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Okay, everybody, bye for now, and have a great day. Jack, it was great seeing you again. And Jack, I'll see you and talk to you again soon, okay? Bye for now, Jack. Okay, everybody. Bye-bye.